Uh, Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Yeah, we're doing this by Zoom. I heard Joanne and Jill say a little bit earlier, they love the Zoom. I usually love the Zoom, but a little bit of a nightmare getting it together today, but it's all working now. So, it's great to see you. We can't take our foot off the pedal. I can't wait till we can meet again in person. Can't wait till we're under a tent or in a room, get an opportunity to look at each other, smile at each other. How you doing? You got a story. You can go that extra mile. There's so many pieces of our lives that have been upended, but this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And until we can get back together in person, we're going to manage as best we can, without a doubt. We're all people that have a passion for this. And we're going to get better at doing it this way. We're going to get better at doing it the ways we have to do until once again we can meet in person. We reached a grim milestone the other day with 200,000 lives being lost to COVID. We had no choice. Global pandemic has changed just about everything we're doing right now. And substance use disorder isn't waiting for things to get better. So what we've got to do is be on top of this. As overdoses and deaths continue at a heartbreaking rate. Our collective battle against addiction and substance use disorder stays with us. It stays with us and begins as well, just in a different way. But we get Joanne Peterson, Chief Shaw on today. We get a lot of good people. A lot of vested people. We've got some of our interns from the office as well today. We're going to have them do some work on stigma. And we're trying to get them up to speed with regards to this very complex disease of the brain. And the one thing I try and keep saying to everyone is compassion. And I echo the words of other people. Our office has had a mandate since I got in, though, with regards to drugs and alcohol 14 years ago, and that's to show compassion, stay within the law. We don't penalize anyone because they have a disease of the brain. And I'm reminded of a quote about prosecutors from a 1935 case that went to the Supreme Court. And it resurfaced again last week in a decision by a Supreme Judicial Court. And it applies to how I want our prosecutors to deal with defendants who have substance use disorder. And the quote is a sensitiveness to fair play in sportsmanship is perhaps the best protection against the abuse of power. And the citizen's safety lies in the prosecutor who tempers zeal with human kindness, who seeks truth and not victims, who serves the law and not factional purposes, and who approaches her task with humility. Compassion, compassion, compassion. And we never, ever can forget compassion in dealing with those with substance use disorder. As we all know, medical evidence is unassailable, according to Dr. Nora Volkoff. When we treat everyone in the way that we should, that this is a very complex disease of the brain, and treat people with social compassion, and with the same medical treatment that we treat other people with relapsable diseases, we're going to be so much better off. On the forefront, on the ground here, we're finishing our second quarter of SIMS, Critical Incident Management Systems. Chief Shaw is going to talk about this a little bit later. We get all of our training done right as we were beginning the COVID pandemic. Just before that, Liz Haddad and Jill Woolridge did a great job. In launching the project during the pandemic has been a challenge, but we've pulled it off. We pulled it off because people want to see this succeed. They want to help people. They have empathy for people. And I want to thank everyone who's made this possible. Our recovery coaches, our police chiefs, and the police officers, and all of our communities for their commitment to making SIMS a success. On October 19th, we'll be conducting a virtual training for police departments on developing a protocol for follow-up visits after overdoses. I want to recognize Fitchburg Chief Ernie Martineau. He and Captain Harry Hess will sit on the panel with Rebecca Zwicker, Recovery Coach Supervisor, the Family Continuity and Program Director of No One Walks Alone. I want to thank Amy Leone, Executive Director of Community Impact in the Regional Substance Navigation Program in the Milford area, who've been ahead of the curve on this in so many different ways. And I should mention that Amy Leone has created a virtual recovery center to provide services until Community Impact's physical center, called Chris's Corner, is ready in downtown Milford in a few weeks. But even when the center is finished, its opening could be delayed because of COVID-19. But Amy's prepared a full schedule of virtual programs just in case. Amy, like Alice, had endless, boundless energy, and I Jill Woolridge as well. So
and Amy is here, DA. Amy is here, and Rebecca are here as well. So
nice, nice. So Chris's Corner is being funded with the Department of Justice grant for over $1 million in partnership with Community Impact in the DA's office. The Recovery Center will help save lives and families. They're going to help families who are suffering from needlessly suffering anymore. Of that, I'm certain. So I've spoken a little bit too much already, but we have a busy program today. I want to thank you for being here. We have two terrific speakers, the Babe Ruths in a baseball analogy in this world. Joanne Peterson, the founder and executive director of Learn to Cope, who's helped so many families, so many peers with answers to questions that they couldn't get before. And Webster Police Chief Michael Shaw, who's just been a great partner. And we've been down in the area talking at the high school about substance use disorder. So let's get started. And I want to start with a thank you to Joanne Peterson. Learn to Cope is an amazing organization. And I mean, I can't overstate this. The superlatives with regards to this program, we direct everyone to Learn to Cope. And everyone gets an ear, everyone gets advice. It's an amazing organization that provides support to families dealing with addiction. They now have 25 chapters in Massachusetts and one in Florida, along with a private online forum that supports more than 11,000 members. Joanne Peterson has been the driving force behind all of it. She created Learn to Cope in 2004 when she discovered her son was addicted to opioids after, she says, a responsible adult put opioids in the hand of her son, and I believe it was 5 other young men. She's done this because there really wasn't any other peer support. There was no way to get questions. Stigma drove people behind walls. People were worried about, is my neighbor going to find out about this? But we know this isn't a moral weakness. It's not a moral leprosy. So Joanne stepped up and Learn to Cope has become a force beyond forces. They're there to answer the questions that these families couldn't get answers to. These families that are suffering, and let them know they're not alone. It's one of the biggest things that Learn to Cope does. She did something about this and did it in such a way that she's a national leader too, in the fight against addiction. With that, I've said enough. We're going to turn it over to Joanne Peterson. Joanne, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, DA, and for your kind words too, and for the invitation to be here. You and your team, I always like working with you guys, and you've always shown compassion to our families with what we deal with and what we go through. So we'll always be so grateful for that. So thank you.
Joanne, we're in this together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you've always treated us with dignity and compassion and respect, you and your team, and I've always been so grateful for that. So for anyone I haven't met, I'm very, very happy to be here today to talk about Learn to Cope and really what our families need and what we go through. And then through COVID, how families have been dealing with COVID and with treatment and also getting the support that they need. So as DA early told you, we started back in 2004. My son, I'm very grateful to say today, is in long-term recovery. But yes, it did start with prescription pills given to him and 4 other boys by a local parent who was sharing his prescriptions with the kids in town. And back in those days, there were no support groups. There was Al-Anon, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization, but this, we needed a little more. We were in such crisis. Our kids had turned to heroin. We didn't even know how to deal with that. So it was just a very crucial time for there to be much more education and support and resources that really wasn't there. So that's really why I needed help myself, and I didn't know I was creating that, but that's what it is today. So I have a son in recovery, but it still continues to hit my family. I lost my niece 2 years ago to a fentanyl overdose, a beautiful young woman who, you know, had so much talent and art, and she was just a beautiful young woman, and she fell into the prescription pill crisis and turned to heroin, which is now really fentanyl out there. That's really all that's out there. We don't really see heroin anymore. It's fentanyl. So today I'll describe a little bit about what we're doing still. As the DA early told you, we have 25 support chapters. We also have one in Florida. These parents are amazing. They came here on their own to learn how to learn to cope. It's a very good group today. So what we do provide at our meetings is support, education, resources, and hope. Hope is a really big piece to this. Without hope, it's really hard to continue on living. And when something's happening to someone you love, hope is one of the biggest things that is needed besides treatment. So we try to provide that. We try to make sure when people come to a meeting that they leave feeling better than they did when they came in. We're available for any family in any community. Every family has always been welcome. I will say that right before COVID hit, we had a kickoff for our very first Latino Learn to Cope group that was due to start in-person meetings in March, right before COVID hit. But I am very happy to say that as of yesterday, we just hired our regional manager who is bilingual. She's a Latino woman who's amazing. We will announce who that is in the next week. And she will be kicking off our very first Spanish-speaking Learn to Cope group, which will be in all Spanish. We have all the Spanish material. So I'm very excited. It's going to have to start on Zoom, but I think we're at the point where we can do that. So on March 13th, when we left our office, we were really nervous because we knew that we weren't going to be able to have our in-person meetings. So I have a team of people that's amazing, 13 people. We come from, a lot of us have been affected by addiction, whether it's alcoholism or prescriptions or, you know, so we're all, most of us are family members that have been affected, but we are also professionals. And our team is amazing. So we quickly got together and we said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to take 25 chapters plus an out-of-state chapter and provide what they're used to getting every week? So what we did was we purchased many Zoom licenses, and what we did was we're in 5 regions of the state. So we combined all of our chapters by region. So as an example, on Monday nights, our Cambridge, Franklin, and Fort Lauderdale parents all meet together on Zoom. On the North Shore, we have Salem and Gloucester and Ipswich. We have, you know, so we, instead of trying to have all 25 meetings at the same time on Zoom, Monday through Thursday, we're able to still provide that on Zoom. And, you know, if you look at this computer now, you have pages of faces, which is heartbreaking because it really, walking into a meeting, it's always been stunning to see how many people need this help, but then to see it on a computer and just have to flip pages of through people that are in crisis. There's also people that their kids are in long-term recovery, or their spouses, or their loved one. It's not just parents. And then sadly, we have many who have lost their children over the years and that still are losing their children. I know Deb Dowd and I can't think of her first name, I'm sorry. Is it Eileen? Lovejoy. Oh, and thank you. I know they're on this chat and they started a grief group in Worcester, which we're so grateful that those are available around the state. So we're also a Narcan provider, and that was a little tricky too. We thought, how are we going to still provide Narcan to families with social distancing, and how will we train them? So what we do, just like we did at our in-person meetings, is we let people know that if they need nasal naloxone, that we can do a Zoom training with them, and then we can deliver it to them, either in their, we can go to their house and put it in their mailbox, or we can put it in the mail. So we've still been able to make sure that families are receiving training and getting Narcan. So I'm really proud of our team, and that we were able to get this up and running. Without the internet, Learn to Cope would not be able to survive. We're not connected to a treatment program. We're not connected to pharmaceutical companies. We're funded by the Department of Public Health, but we also are a nonprofit. We don't do a lot of fundraising, but what we do with our nonprofit dollars is we provide something that we can't use Department of Public Health money for, like a Canopy Lake Day for children, which we would have had our 5th summer doing that. And unfortunately, we're not able to because of COVID. But for 4 summers in a row, we brought, 200 kids to Canopy Lake and their caregivers or grandparents or parents. We've provided tools for someone that's in recovery that's going back into the Carpenters Union. We've sent people through yoga teacher training, young women that are in long-term recovery. So we try to get really creative with donor money on what we can do for families that we can't use state money for. We've been having webinars. We'll have our 3rd webinar on September 29th, and that's Diana Clark, who runs Healing Family Strategies. She's amazing. So we've been able to provide that. And just in general, since COVID hit, what we've seen is a spike in relapse, which I hate to even say, but a lot of people that were considered in long-term recovery that have lost their jobs, not able to pay their rent, or they were in sober living and couldn't pay their sober living rent anymore. And then also getting these big stimulus checks for somebody that's in very early recovery. If you're a family member of someone in recovery, sometimes money is a real trigger for somebody having money right away without long-term treatment. Having that money alone is a real trigger. So some people got these huge checks for the stimulus, and then they disappear. And, the parents are struggling, not knowing where they are. Section 35 turned into a bit of a nightmare for a while because you really couldn't go into the courthouse to do a Section 35. But it did get a little better after a while. People were able to call the courthouse ahead. And then in general, when a family loses somebody, it's gotten a little better now, but during March, April, May, and June, we always have loss, but we definitely noticed a spike. But then the even harder thing about it is these poor families weren't able to have a funeral or that ritual that you have when you lose someone that you love. So we got a little creative with that when some of our groups lost somebody. I'll give an example. One group, they all decided to go to that family's house and leave candles on their lawn. Other groups have gone to the cemetery as the private ceremony was being held, and from a distance sat in their cars just to let that family know that they were there. It was truly heartbreaking. It's always heartbreaking when you lose somebody, but to not be able to be around your friends and your family and get that support during those crucial days. And then usually after the funeral is the worst time. And you couldn't even do that. You were so isolated, and these families were very isolated. So, the trauma from that is real. So families, DA, earlier you mentioned compassion. We always need compassion, but even more so. When you have a mom that's, looking for her missing son or daughter, and all you can do is get on a computer and talk to people, and how do I do this? How do I file a missing persons report? The last time she was seen, she was in a hotel, and I'm afraid she's being trafficked. I mean, this is just real life crisis. So compassion is probably the most important thing for anybody to have with a family that's grappling with this, because as we all know, and you've all heard this statement before, this disease isn't the one that people usually come to your door with a basket of cookies and say, how can I help you? It's more they run the other way because they don't know what to say to you. I always have loved the fact that we've worked with law enforcement. We still continue today, with DA Early, your office, with other DA's offices around the state. I love the fact that you do overdose, after an overdose support. That means so much to people, just to have somebody knock on the door and to be able to connect with law enforcement in that way is always been admirable. And that's what it's all about. Like you said, DA Early, we're all in this together, and this hits any, you could be a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a scholar, and this could happen in your family. I mean, addiction, in my case, and I'll just say I truly believe in my own family's case, and from talking to elders in my family, addiction runs in my genes. It wasn't until after this happened with my son that my mother said, well, the reason Grandpa never had a drink was because he found his dad, dead in a rocking chair from an alcohol overdose. And here I was a mom of a young son that had just graduated high school, and I'm like, what? How did I never know this? And well, that's not something anybody really wanted to talk about. And so that is also something that we'd like to see change. I think it's okay. And my mom was the sweetest, most loving mother in the world. It wasn't that she was just keeping that from me. It was more like, ooh, we don't really want to talk about that. That's too much to tell a young child. It's not too much to tell a young child that their grandfather or great grandfather died of an alcohol overdose. It's actually an opportunity to educate and say, there's this thing called addiction. It can start with alcohol. It can start with marijuana. It can start when you broke your ankle in football, and those pills that you're taking for just 1 day or 2 days before I give you Motrin, you could become heavily addicted to those, and you could end up losing the dreams that you have for your future. So, rather than hiding and talking about drug or alcohol addiction, it's okay to bring that up. When my niece passed away, she left behind a beautiful young child who we support very much. And he's very open about, my mom had a disease. He says that. And he understands that. So when you educate, that lifts shame off somebody's shoulders. So one of the first things a family member feels when they find out their son or daughter has become addicted to something is guilt and shame and blame. So you can't forget that the siblings in that family are feeling that too. They may not feel the guilt, but they feel the shame. So talking about it openly lifts that shame, and it gives them a reason to be able to educate themselves and their friends even, and say, yeah, I know you saw my brother in the newspaper the other day. Yes, he is addicted and we're trying to help him. And, so it's already out there. The news is all out there. So talking about it, I guess, is my message. Like communication along with the compassion is probably one of the best ways to hopefully inoculate someone from having to come to our meetings. And that's basically COPE is. Oh, I will mention with our grief support, like what you have in Worcester with the HALO group. A lot of the groups that started around the state were former Learn to Cope parents who, when they lose their child, they feel lost. They don't know where to go. Not only have they lost their family member, and now they've lost that group. I mean, they would always be welcome back, but they don't feel like they should be coming back. And so they end up like, just suspended in air, like, where do I belong now? So the nice thing is that these groups have started around the state, and we did partner with Franklin Cook, who is a very well-known grief helper. And through his organization too, it's called SAD OD, which is substance assist. I can't think of, if you look at sadod.org, they have pretty much taken over the grief support and offered them the support that they need. We do have one that meets on Monday nights, though, that's still through Learn to Cope, and it's called Still Learning, Still Coping. And Peter Babineau, one of our regional managers, who's amazing, he started noticing that we do have a lot of parents that lost a son or daughter, but they also have another son or daughter that's struggling with substance use disorder. So they're even more so hanging with nowhere to go, because they want to go to a grief group, but they still want to go to Learn to Cope, because they have both situations. So he started a unique grief group on Monday nights, and it's all parents that have lost one and still have another. So they still need that support for the one that's out there with SUD, substance use disorder, and then support for, the loss and the grief that they feel for their child, which they'll feel for the rest of their lives. Thank you. Someone just put it up. Support after a death by overdose, which is www.sadod.org. So I think I've covered everything that we're doing. I will say things, I don't know when our meetings will be back in person. We're watching this epidemic like everybody else is, and some of our meetings get pretty large. So even if they say that we could have 20 people in a room, that's not going to help us, because some of our meetings there's 50 people or 60 people. And one thing that first and foremost for us is everybody's safety and health. So luckily we have Zoom, and like I said, we're still able to provide everything that we were able to provide before, only we're missing that in person, like DA Early, like you said, nothing can replace in-person meetings and that hug and that handshake, and times have changed. But I'm grateful to you, DA Early and Elizabeth and the team, and for all your work. And I'm looking forward to hearing the chief. And just thank you again for having me. If anybody needs to get a hold of us, you can go to www.learn2cope.org. If you need a Zoom meeting, you can fill out the Stay Connected form on our website, and we keep everything so private. We don't put our Zoom links out publicly. So if you fill out that form, you'll be connected to a regional manager in the region that you're from, and you'll be sent the Zoom link to get the support you need. And also, if you need nasal naloxone, you can contact us. So thank you so much for having me. And that's it.
Yay. Jill's going to share them briefly so people can see them, but we're also going to send those out in a follow-up email. So you'll get all of that. And just, if people are looking at the chat, someone did share a really great resource called Team Sharing. Team Sharing is a nonprofit that supports families after a loss to overdose, including financial support for hardship or for funeral or burial expenses. And that I put that website in the chat as well. But all of this will be in a follow-up email after the meeting. So you'll get all of this information again.
All right. Joanne, thanks so much. Just a couple of things. Could you call anyone talking to me today? Could you call me Joe, please?
Oh, sure. Okay, Joe.
No, I feel like my old man here. So, couple things. Humility and compassion are close brothers and sisters, and there's no one more humble with you when it comes with regards to what you're doing. The tragedy is all too real. My cousin the other day, a couple of weeks ago, lost her daughter, left a child behind. And the first call was to me, second call was to Liz Haddad, the third call was to Learn to Cope. So thanks for helping her. She had so many questions. And it was kind of different for me because I've got a couple other nieces a niece and a nephew that have substance use disorder, but they've survived their overdoses. So this was different. All of a sudden, there's just that feeling of hopelessness. And what you guys do, you know, it's just amazing. Humility and compassion, really, they're a close brother and sister. You bring people in, and that message of allowing them to feel a little bit better when they leave, it's just amazing. It truly is. I like Dr. Nora Volkoff, and you've seen Dr. Volkoff down at the Prescription Drug Abuse and Heroin Summit. Oh, I don't know if we're going to get to go there this year, but she's got a couple of lines. One of my favorite is, if a person overdoses and goes to an emergency room and they leave without a treatment plan in place, it should be medical malpractice.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love her quote that, I mentioned it earlier, in case anyone wasn't, medical evidence is unassailable. We need social compassion and medication-based medicine that we use on other relapsable diseases. She's no nonsense. I went up to her and I said, if a person goes to an emergency room doctor, she goes, and leaves without a treatment plan in place, it should be medical malpractice. She's tough.
Yeah.
And we were talking to Sam Canones the other day, the author of Dreamland. He's working on a second book right now. I didn't know that, it's going to make us all better. And I get into this job because of my father. I watched the way he helped people. And I truly believe we're down here to help each other. I think we're down here to serve each other. I think we're down to help each other. That's just not my job. That's my faith. But what Learn to Cope does, I can't thank you enough. And sometimes I talk to you and I feel bad because you're wearing the weight of the world on your shoulders. And it's better love it when we see you smile and have a laugh. But this is tough business. So Joanne, thank you for everything. Thank you for everything.
Let me say, I don't do this work alone at all. I have an unbelievable team of people behind me. Plus, all of our volunteers are unbelievable. Like even when I did, the Halo group and other groups that have formed, or Team Sharing, all those groups, those are all people that have been affected. And then, they end up out there helping themselves and everybody else. So I just want to say, like, thank you so much. And thankfully, I don't do all this by myself. There's so many heroes out there. It's just amazing.
So Joe, and which reminds me to thank my staff, because I'm nothing without my staff. You're only as good as the people around you, and they all have a passion for this as well. And I mentioned Rebecca's work earlier, and I think I did not mention her group, No One Walks Alone. I mentioned some other things she was associated with. I want to correct that. But I truly believe we're down here to help each other. And when you do help other people, that compassion, you're doing God's work. And you do God's work every day. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Chief Shaw, another great partner. Chief Shaw became the chief after working for 22 years in Webster, working his way up the department. Another guy with another person with a lot of humility. And he's been active in the fight against addiction and serves on the board of Webster's Peer Recovery Center. He does a lot on the prevention end. We're all about prevention. Jill Woolridge and Ellen Miller, they go into the schools talking about our evidence-based program. This is not about drugs. Just to get the kids, to give them the ability to make informed decisions when it comes to opioids, and not get the information from other kids in school who might be raiding a parent or a grandparent's medicine cabinet. Chief Shaw is just a great partner. He doesn't look like he's been working for as many years as he has. Every time I see him, I'm just amazed at how young he looks. But he's a great partner. He's great with the kids. He's great on the prevention end. And, we all know prevention and intervention are always underfunded and underutilized, but they're our most effective weapon in this fight. Sometimes they're not going to work, but when the message is delivered, sometimes it does. I mean, if you got that addictive gene, we know it's such a tough thing. And Joanne, you cut my ear when you talk about the spike. It's a question I keep getting. Where's crime? Where's the drug problem? I forget all about those checks being put in kids' hands. I know my kids were talking to their friends saying, hey, you got to apply for this. Did they hire you back at work? No, you got to apply for these guys. It's just the money that they were throwing out there was crazy. So, Chief, you're a great partner. You're full of compassion. You're full of empathy. You do this for all the right reasons. You're another person. It's not about me. It's about we. Thank you so much, Chief Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. It's been
It's Joe.
Joe. It's so sorry. It's the St. John's in me. I have to. I can't get rid of it. Thank you for asking me to speak. It's actually an honor. I was blown away by it. Thank you. So I talk a little bit about Sims and what we've done, but I wanted to kind of touch on where we came from and before Sims, because I think that's kind of important. So back in March of 2017, we started our opiate task force here in Webster, and that was made up of stakeholders. We have a great team out here with police, fire, EMS, public health, Hubbard Hospital, a lot of different stakeholders, local clergy, and we all saw the problem that was going on. So we collectively gathered and wanted to come up with some solutions to try to combat this thing. So in doing so, we formed a great partnership with our regional resource center from the sheriff's office down the street, which has been great to have. It's such an asset here to have it here in town. I actually feel very fortunate. So what we did early on was, once we had an overdose identified, police officers, our officers go on all the medical calls here. So anytime there's an overdose, they carry the Narcan. They're responding. So once we got notified that it was an overdose, we would make a telephone phone call. The case manager down at the resource center would make a phone call, offer them services over the phone. We weren't doing any in-person visits or anything like that yet. We weren't quite there. We did see an impact. I mean, we saw our overdoses decline a little bit, so we thought we were having some success with that. Fast forward to maybe about a year and a half ago, we started through our task force started to grow a little bit, and we saw some need for in-person follow-ups, and we thought that was a big thing. That was obviously clearly the next step. So utilizing the case manager, Jen Duso down at the sheriff's office has been awesome. We made contact with a recovery coach that we have through the task force that comes out with us, and they were going out and we were doing some knock and talks for people that were not just overdose, but also people that they thought that maybe had been at high risk of an overdose, people that we knew were users of opiates and that we wanted to make them some services. So we were getting all of our numbers and names and whatnot, mostly from the police logs. So I would go through the log every day and read it, and if somebody was an overdose, make a note of it, put the address out, and we would do a follow-up. So, which was great for people in town. The problem was, if somebody from Webster overdosed out of town, we had no knowledge of it. And that's where, once Sims went online live in March, we were able to be notified of that, which is critical, because those people come back to Webster. We would have, no idea that they needed help. So we were able to find out who those people were, and we were able to get them services. So as Sims was coming online, around that time, our state rep had gotten us an earmark for the task force, which a legislative earmark for some money. So that enabled us to open a peer recovery center here in town, but it also gave us funds to hire community outreach advocates. So I was able to put Jen on a payroll and recovery coach. I actually hired 2 recovery coaches, and we're in the process of trying to get a 4th, so that we have a little more of a team of resources. So if someone's not available, we can fill them in with another recovery coach to go do those knock and talks. So since Sims has been online, we've made 37 entries into it, and a lot of those are multiple entries. So we've actually made more, so 37 individuals, but a lot of those people have multiple overdoses. And we've also identified some people, which the nice thing about Sims is you can identify people that are at risk, and you can make a referral there. So we can identify them in the database as well. So everything is really here in the database. It's very easy to utilize. I have 2 other officers and myself that are trained in it, that I sent to the training, and they enter the data. And it's nice that we have that kind of redundancy, so we make sure that we're not missing anybody. If I see somebody has an overdose, I can reach out to them and make sure that they've been entered. Usually they're right on top of it. And then it's nice that they do the follow-ups. So I have two other officers that saw kind of what we were doing. They saw myself when we started doing the follow-ups with Jen and Jen, our other recovery coach, and Shannon. We were going out. It was mostly myself, and we were having some success. We had some get some people in some programs, and at least even just getting the information out there was good. And the officers saw that, so we started to see some buy-in from the department, which is huge, because police officers, let's face it, they're very cynical, and a lot of them have a hard time with this. Is a new kind of a relatively new concept in policing, for us to actually be going out there and making contact with these folks, not on a call. And for them to see what we were doing, they started to refer us people that, hey, this person might need some help for outreach. They would offer the services. They would give them a card and would give us the opportunity to go follow up with that person, which is huge. So we had the buy-in from the department. So that I have two other officers and myself on occasion will go out and do the follow-ups, which is essential. But having the SIMS database makes it so much easier to track that, because we didn't have that before. So the nice thing is, with the outreach advocate that we have, she's also working at the peer recovery center one night a week, just as another version of her, another duty that she's able to perform. And she leads a group out there, and she's a social worker working at the local hospital here. It's been really kind of, since the SIMS has gone online for us, it's allowed us to network with a lot of other agencies and really gotten some good resources out there. And the town has been gracious enough where we're able to put them. So we had that, I mentioned that earmark that it actually expired June 30th, but I was able to continue to keep those folks on my payroll. So I'm able to compensate them for their time going out there. And it really hasn't been a huge dent in my budget. And I think it's something that's necessary going forward. I mean, since October to July 1st, I think it only cost me around $2,000 to pay them. The officers do it for compensatory time. They have an agreement in their contract where they get a comp time if they don't do it on the shift. Some of the other things that we've been doing. So ideally, what we want to do is get a social worker in here. That's my end goal. But getting the SIMS involved for the departments is huge. It's allowed us to do a lot more things and reach a lot more people. And I think that we're seeing a lot more buy-in, at least on our end, for the community. So I just saw a question push out there about if our knock and talks were for opioids. And actually, one of the things that we talked about was that we started our task force started off as an opiate task force. But one of the things that we talked about is it's a substance use disorder task force, which is, we still call it the opiate task force, but we do all our outreach for people that alcohol, any kind of drug use, opiates, obviously, anything that they might need assistance with. And I can tell you, having gone on a few of them, when Joanne said that, the people are so appreciative that someone follows up on them, that is so true. That's like some of the best connections that we've made has been with families, people that just appreciate that somebody cared. And, I've had some people say, wow, the chief of police is actually at my door with a social worker because they actually care. And that mission kind of has spread throughout our department. I'll be honest, not everybody has bought into what we do, but a majority of we're a younger department, and they see the need, and I've explained it to them, like, this is going to pay dividends down the road. Once you reach out to these people, and if you get them help, then you're going to reap the benefits probably after I'm retired. If we can set this mindset going forward, that we're here to help people, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. And if these folks have an issue and they need help getting it, and we are the vehicle right now to get them that help, that's huge. It's kind of part of what we do. In no way is it, we're not soft on crime or anything like that, but it's just, it's just an asset. It's a big asset, and it was great. It was a godsend. I'd gone to a Chiefs training maybe a year or so ago, and I saw the Plymouth County model where I think this was taken from, and it was exactly what we needed. And I was like, oh, this is great. And we tried to mimic it locally on our end, but it's just hard to do it with a 30-person department and everything else going on. But then, so then when, the district attorney's office said they were buying this, and I think Chief Martineau from Fitchburg put out looking for agreement, I think, I signed up right away. I was like, yeah, absolutely. This is what we need to do. It's been great. And, I'm excited to see where it goes. It's kind of morphed into some other things that we've done. So we started doing the knock and talks, and, it's really kind of led into our peer recovery center down the street. We had started that with Pastor Janice Ford. She had a little storefront down the road that we tried to make into a recovery center, and we were able to finally move. We got some grants and some private donations, and we put it on Main Street, and the influx of people that we have gotten has been fantastic. We do all kinds of activities and refer people. It's a good place for folks to go. And if we don't have the services there, we refer them out to places like Learn to Cope, all those things. So it's just another tool in the tool belt that we can utilize. There's a few things that we definitely are working through it. COVID kind of put a wrench in the wheel as far as doing our knock and talks, because early on we stopped because we didn't know exactly what we were going to be dealing with this pandemic. So we did reach out telephonically as much as we could. Everybody was working remotely. Everything had been shut down. But pretty much once, I think mid-May to June came, we were watching the numbers locally COVID case wise, and we went right back into it. And now we're back in full swing. So we've got a good team, and we're looking to constantly improve it and make it better. But it's been definitely, SIMS is a great tool, and it's really, we have 3 people that do it. It doesn't take a ton of time. We put in all our old data so that we would be able to populate that, so it would be on there in case anybody came across somebody. So we were, that was a little bit of time consuming, but since then, I've entered people. It takes literally a few minutes, and it's nice to be able to go in and check in that follow-up. It makes it just that much easier to have that centralized database. So it's easy just to go click on, and you can see what needs to be done and how to follow up and who needs to be spoken to. So it's been great. And so I'm thrilled that we have it. That's really probably it in a nutshell.
So
Thank you,
I
Chief.
did see some questions in the chat as well.
Just before we start on the questions, couple of things. Chief, you took it away before I could give my good friend Timmy Cruz credit for it. But thanks for pointing that out. We got an article one day and it said Worcester County deaths were up. And I think the number was 26%. And at the same time, Plymouth counties were down 26%. And that's what led to me calling Timmy and say, Timmy, what's working? And he said, Joe, it's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. And we went down, we took about a dozen people down to the Plymouth County meeting. I know Joanne's very aware of this. And when we step out of our silos and we share successes, that's when we're at our best. Also sharing failures, what didn't work. And stepping out of the silos is so important. People are people, and sometimes people don't want to share success. But this is a business where it's not I or me, it's we. And Timmy was so generous with regards to all of that. We got to see the chiefs down there and how they partnered with the sheriff and the groups. And I think there's someone from Learn to Cope at the meeting. And they just went around the room, and we had some real naysayers up here, or some people, oh, we're already doing that. What do we need to do that for? We're doing that. No, we're not on that level. And what Tim Cruz has done down there is just amazing. We've shared a lot of successes over the years I've been in. I find Timmy's a little bit different than me. Politically, he's Republican. I'm a Democrat. But none of it matters. We share, and we share because we care. A couple of things we know, this disease, discrimination is such a big talk on so many different levels right now. This disease doesn't discriminate. This disease grabs everyone. So let's get to those questions, Liz. Chief, following up, Joanne, I got two heavy hitters today. You guys are great. So thanks. This is what makes these meetings work. Liz, let's get to those questions. You got it. You're on mute, Liz.
On mute. Yep, there was just the one question I think the chief answered. Somebody is asking, does the SIMS database include names and addresses? So, we have information in there. We don't release any of that to the public anyways. The chiefs don't. And I will just say this about SIMS. Each chief or each department in each town only has access to the data in their town. But there is some identifying information. We don't ever release that to the public, ever. And then, you notice I mentioned, and it is not just for opioid overdoses. Like the chief said, he responds to every overdose in his town. SIMS, there's an option for entering any drug that might have been at the scene of an overdose, not just opioids.
Follow up on that. One of the beautiful things about SIMS, it's going to let us get into the homes of families where kids have been traumatized because they witnessed an overdose. And we're going to deal with the trauma as well. We're working with all our partners on that. And this is just one of the things that SIMS can provide us. I mean, you talk about good government, or you hear bad government all the time, but this is good government. And we can get in, we can talk to those kids, make sure someone reaches out to them the next day. Just like you said, Joanne and the chief, what you said, to let them know someone cares, to let them know, hold their hand for a few minutes, let them cry with you. There's some great stuff that can come out of this. Just in addition to the knock on the door, because a kid witnesses a parent do this or a brother or sister do this, it stays with them forever. So there's a lot of tools in the toolbox with regards to this. And we're going to keep working with all our partners. Liz, do we have any more questions?
We do have just a couple more questions. One question about SIMS is, are data filled by town of residence, by town of occurrence, or both? It's both. So both are in there. SIMS, when we first implemented it in March, it was cross-jurisdictional in our county. So all the departments in our county could report overdoses and get follow-ups. But in June or July, I think, it went cross-county. So any county that participates in SIMS, which is Worcester, Middlesex, Essex, Plymouth, obviously, all those counties, it's now cross-county jurisdictional. So if Chief Shaw has an overdose in Webster and the person is from Brockton, then the Brockton police are going to be able to hear about that and do a follow-up as well. The other question, Chief, is about after the initial contact, do you do other follow-ups? And the question is from Amanda, and she says that Plymouth is doing 30, 60, and 90-day follow-ups.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do follow-ups. We probably don't wait 30 days. We probably do it like every couple of weeks. Jen's really good about following up via the telephone, and then we'll do another visit.
So Jen is actually she is here at the
Yep.
meeting, and she was just answering that as well. Thank you so much, Jen. And then Nicker Jenkins asks, is it only for overdoses or are other incidents like domestic violence included for SIMS? That would be, as far as we're concerned, no, this is only for substance use disorder.
And it is one of the disturbing trends we're seeing as well, the rise in domestic violence while people are quarantined. And we're aware of that, and our police departments and our social agencies are all aware of that as well. And one or two other things, sexual abuse and some stuff, we're aware of that. And for that reason, we can't wait to get out of quarantine. We can't wait to get out of isolation, so that the reporters and the people who are especially trained to pick up on this stuff will pick up on this stuff. Some pretty sobering statistics. Liz, you're on mute again.
Oh, sorry about that. I just don't want anybody to have to listen to my dog barking, because you never know what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to run a quick poll, and then the DA is just going to wrap it up by talking a little bit about the subcommittee work. Those subcommittees now, I have got them scheduled. All that information is going to go out after the meeting. So after the meeting, you'll get a link, and whatever committee you're interested in, you can just join, via Zoom that day. And then we'll start that work phone. But I just have a brief poll, and I'm going to bring it up here, and the panelists can vote. So here we go. Oh, are people voting? Can people see the poll?
Again,
Okay. Okay, nobody has voted.
How many questions are there, Liz?
Just 4.
It's not letting me submit it.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, 4, wait a minute, okay.
Okay, here we go. They must wait until,
Oh, you gotta answer all 4 questions. You gotta scroll down. Mine only showed 3, okay.
yeah, you have to scroll, yeah. Okay, there we go. Right.
How are your results?
We've got about 80% voted. So at this point, we can talk about, people can see the results, pretty interesting. We're at about 50-50 on whether or not things are getting back to normal. And about half of everybody at this point feels that COVID restrictions are easing at just the right pace. People are feeling prepared for an uptick this fall, which is great. And we're kind of at 50-50 right now about virtual resources for people with SUD. And that really doesn't surprise me. I think there's been a lot of talk in a lot of the groups and a lot of the meetings about how hard it is to do this kind of outreach. I think we all know that. I'm going to end the poll. I thought it was pretty interesting. Oh, here we go. Sharing can everybody see that now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's probably been the toughest thing, obviously, through all of this, is getting people resources, reaching out to them and getting them what they need and when they need it. So hopefully we're going to go back to normal sooner rather than later. But I think I've seen a lot of people doing some really great work too. So I'm going to take this down.
So just one other thing too, I know Chief Shaw, thank you. There are some other chiefs on here. I just want to recognize that are doing great work in the towns. Chief Nelson in Bolton, Chief Spaghetti in Milford, Chief Wayner in Dudley, who's been a great partner, Chief Anderson in Shrewsbury, and Chief Montemini in Uxbridge. I want to thank you for being on the call, this Zoom call this morning as well. Did we have any other chiefs join in today, Liz? And this is, and I got to thank our chiefs. I think Chief Patton was the driving force in this. And it's like anything. There was immediate buy-in from a lot of people. Some people had their doubts, but this is going very, very well. And the one thing, and we can't take our foot off the pedal. The second we stop charging forward is when we're going to have problems, when we're going to fail. We just have to keep borrowing from other people's successes and failures. We have to keep marching forward and keeping the people with a passion at the forefront of all of this, because we can't let this get lost in the pandemic. And I know we haven't said it today, but if you look at 200,000 lives lost because of COVID-19, but we were losing 70,000 a year for the 3 previous years for substance use disorder, and it just didn't ring the same bell. And my opinion is because of the stigma. So we have some of our interns on today, and they're going to be working on, we're going to be meeting weekly and working on a paper, improving some of the other stuff we've done with other intern classes on stigma, find out what their successes are throughout the country, and a little bit of prevention on that as well, and try and stay focused on that as well. So we like to finish these meetings usually within an hour, 15 minutes. Liz, I'm going to get to the closing remarks unless we have anything else.
No, I just want to reiterate the information on the subcommittee work will go out in this follow-up email, and that will include dates, times, and Zoom links. So we're ready to go. And if you're interested in subcommittee work, I urge you to sign up for one of the subcommittees.
Okay. Well, thanks for everyone for joining us today. And I particularly want to thank Joanne Peterson and Chief Shaw for bringing that message that you brought to the group today. I can't thank you enough. You know, we've scheduled, like Lou said, the initial task force meeting, subcommittee meetings over the next couple of weeks. Information for the meetings is going to go out in the task force update. Task force update will go out after the meeting. All of the subcommittees are going to work virtually for the foreseeable future. And the subcommittees are, and if you want to get become a part of any of them, let us know. We have a subcommittee on education and prevention. Prevention's near and dear to my heart. I know if you want to see the numbers go down, you've got to prevent. You've got to intervene. You've got to get to the kids. I know most successful prevention programs work between the hours of 3 to 6 around responsible adults, truly responsible adults. Those are the times kids left alone, you know, left to their own can get in the most trouble. We have a community collaboration subcommittee. We have a community resources and support subcommittee. We have the subcommittee on emerging trends in substance abuse and treatment. If you want to get involved in any of these, and you can participate as little or as much as you want, we want your input. We want your input because we are in this together, and together it's how we're going to get out of it. Together it's how we're going to save lives. Together is, you know, working together is a tour de force. There's no iron team. And when you work together, it's just such a motivational, progressive factor. So I want to thank everyone, especially I guess today. Thank you guys. We're all in this together. We're all in this together, and we'll get through this together. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Be healthy.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.